Welcome to another video in this channel. Today I'm gonna start with a new project for you guys. This is a sort of like beginner training for people who want to get into the 3D world, and we're going to start with part 1 today, where we're going to be modeling this sections here for this SNES controller. So yeah, this is going to be a series. If you like it at the end of the video, please leave me a comment so that we know that we should continue this one, of course, and I hope you learned a lot of cool stuff. Let's go to the video. So we're inside Maya 2025. This is the new version. Now I'll probably make a new video about this, but to be honest, I mean, it's a good release, it's an okay release, but they didn't really add a lot of stuff, at least not for the stuff that I do most of the time. We're going to talk a little bit about Arnold during this series once we hit rendering. There's this new modeling tool, which is like a smart extrude, similar to the Q mesh inside of ZBrush, I would say, and a couple of animation things over here as well. But I don't do a lot of animation, so yeah, we'll see. Now, one thing that I did notice is that it no longer crashes when it opens the first time. I don't know what bug was that on 2024, but I'm glad it's gone. So, of course, the first thing we need to do is we need to set our project. As you guys know, we already have our project here that we've been working with. So, let's very quickly go with the projects 2024, and there we go. Set the project. And I already downloaded an image of the controller that we're going to be doing, which is, of course, the SNES controller, this one right here. So this is the Switch version, the sort of wireless version, and I mean we can add the wire later on, but it's a very nice high quality image that we're gonna be able to use. This is directly from the Nintendo side, so you can get it as well. So Control X to cut that thing, and let's go to our project here, 2024, and you always drop your images, remember, in source images. Very, very important. Now, this is an excellent exercise because if you are learning about modeling, it's a sort of like beginner, intermediate level exercise, but if you're learning about modeling, you definitely need to know how to properly model sort of like hard surface elements with proper loops. And it's not that hard, but again, we need to understand what's going on here. So as you can see, this piece right here, it's a very flat surface, which makes it easy for us, but there's a lot of like bevels and insets and things that we have here where all of the buttons are. So whenever we're dealing with this sort of stuff, I always like to focus on the main shapes first and then work on the detail elements. So we always go from big shapes to small shapes. And in this case, the biggest shape is, of course, the controller itself. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with a cylinder, 20-sided cylinder. We're going to be using a subdivision workflow. So that means that we're going to be subdividing our elements constantly to get the result that we want. And we're going to use the border on this cylinder to capture the proper roundness, as you can see, of the element right there. Perfect. Now I'm going to go into face mode, and I'm going to delete all of these faces right here. So I'm just going to leave the border right there, as you can see. And then from this edge right here, that one, it's hidden, right? But it's the one that's right there on the border. We're going to extrude this, and with W, I'm going to push this all the way to the center of the grid right there. And over here, I'm going to do something similar. I do want to extrude it once to give it a little bit more curvature there. And then after I have that curvature, we push it to the side. There we go. Again, with X, we can snap to the grid. So if we go outside into our perspective view, this is the shape that we're going to have. And it's one of those things that you learn about the 3D world that you need to start thinking in abstract ways. So even though I was looking at the front view right here, I knew that this was the shape that I was going to be getting on the top view. Now, the fun part here is that we actually don't need any of those elements just yet. I'm actually going to go here to my edges. I'm going to select this edges right here, so all of this outer border. I'm going to press Control E to extrude, and we're going to do a little bit of a thickness here. In this case, it's going to be thickness. Just a little bit of thickness. Why? Because as you can see, we have this circular element right here on the left side, or the right side, sorry, where the buttons are. So I do want to create an edge loop that goes around the whole thing, but I don't want to touch that circle yet. So once we have this, that's it. I can actually delete all of these faces. We don't need them. We're gonna, we can very easily recover the thickness. Thickness is one of those things in the 3D world that you don't need to worry too much about because it's relatively simple to just bring thickness back into objects. And if you think in flat ways like this one right here, it might be a little bit easier to get some of the shapes going before we actually do the shapes or before we actually do the models. So over here now we have the button section. So I'm gonna grab another cylinder. We're gonna rotate this. I learned very recently the J shortcut, which is the the one to snap this thing. Made a fool out of myself online, but yeah, I've been using Maya for a long time, and it's the first time I know that you can press the J key to snap rotate. And we're gonna get this so that it fits within the circle of our element, as close as possible, something like that. Again, we're gonna delete the faces. We don't need anything except for this border right here. I'm gonna Control E, and we're gonna do a little bit of thickness in. And there we go. So again, all of these guys right here, we don't need them. Bye-bye. And this one's right here, I'm going to press center pivot over here, and we're going to snap them with the V. Why V? Because V is going to snap to the geometry, to the points, or the closest point. In this case, of course, the only geometry that we have is this other border right here. So as you can see now, we've successfully created the loop that's going to have the sort of like the entrance to this gray area, and we've created this shape right here as well. Now, on the other side, we're also going to need a little bit of an element. I'm going to duplicate it already because I know we're going to be using it. I'm just going to duplicate this circle and position it as close as possible again to the border that we have right there. Perfect. So this one right here, the first thing I need to do is I need to combine it with this element so that we can start filling in all of the flat areas. So I'm just going to say combine or merge right here with this button right here, which is combine. And if we go to our quadro tool, what we can do, or we should be able to do, is we should be able to just bridge all of these elements so that we can properly complete all of the wireframe that we're doing right here, all of our straight mesh. There we go. Now you can see here's where topology starts playing a little bit of a role. By the way, stay tuned because we're going to have our retopology course very, very soon. If you're watching this later in the future, we probably already have it on our website. So one of the things that we always talk about retopology and topology in general is we want to have things going from top to bottom and from left to right. That is a good rule of thumb whenever we're trying or dealing with retopology. For instance, here, I'm going to add one cut right there so that these two can very nicely just bridge together. So from here to here, from here to here, we're just going to bridge, and from here to here, we're going to bridge as well. So now, as you can see, we got this orientation going. Now, at this point, I'm going to grab this guys right here, Control E again, and with W, and I'm again going to straighten them out right there and get them in line with the rest of the elements. So now, as you can imagine, we can just bridge this one right here and this one right here, and all of the center line is going to be a perfectly clean center line that we can very easily mirror to the other side. I'm going to say mirror. It's going to be world x negative merge vertex. I like to use custom.001 to make sure that only the center line is merged. Hopefully this is finally the version where they fix the mirror thing that we've been struggling with for so long. So that's it. Now I know that this element right here is a 20-sided cylinder, right? So I'm just going to delete that one, grab both of these guys right here, combine them again, and we can just grab this guy and bridge. That's it. There we go. Of course, here we use a little bit of twist to find the proper number. Bridge offset. There we go. There we go. That looks a lot better. So now, as you can see, we got this very nice flowy topology where we have the big circle on one side and the smaller circle on the other side. Now, this circle right here, the small one, we need to finish it up. As you can see, this is the border, kind of like the bevel that goes down. So let's very quickly grab this edge right here and do a mesh, fill hole, and then edit mesh and poke. Okay, this is a flat area, and eventually we're going to be doing the cross section, but for now I just want to use this flat area and then grab this guys right here, Control E, just push this in a little bit to create the sort of effect that we're seeing there on our element. Now, of course, this has slightly softened edges. This one has one bevel, I would say. It's a relatively long bevel, and this one has another one. So when I press number 3, as you can see, we're going to get this very, very nice inset right there. Again, all of these faces, later on, we're going to do a little bit of a trick to create the little cross section right there. But for now, we're going to keep it like that. On this side, though, we do need to do another extrusion, push this in, right? So that we can generate the little empty area where the gray element is going to be located. So on this one, I just need one bevel right here. I'm going to add 2 segments and a small fraction. But it's a little bit sharper because you can see that this is sort of a smooth bevel and it's a little bit more of a cut line. And look at that. We got the main section of our controller ready. Again, remember I mentioned that don't worry about thickness? Just grab this guy, push it back. There you go. You got thickness for your controller. So no big deal. At any point we can recover the thickness. Don't sweat it. We're gonna do that a lot better later on. Now for this piece right here, this is where things start getting a little bit more interesting. So I know that we're going to need another cylinder. And within that cylinder, we have this pill-shaped elements, and within those pill-shaped elements, we have all of the buttons. This is why controllers, this one is a relatively easy one. A long time ago, I did a GameCube controller, and that was a little bit more tricky. Some of the modern controllers like Xbox and PS5s are more ergonomic, and therefore the curvatures are a little bit more extreme. But even these ones, they're excellent exercises for us to understand how all of this works. So I'm gonna extract things here. I'm gonna grab this line right here, which is like a very simple 20-sided cylinder, right? I'm gonna say edit mesh, or yeah, edit mesh, and then duplicate. There we go. So now we're gonna have a separate object right there. We can center the pivot point, and you can use this to generate the borders for all of the buttons. So this is gonna be the border here for the green button. Control D. This is gonna be the one for the blue button. I'm not gonna scale it anymore, right? And again, work smart, not hard. If we already have one right here, there's no need for us to do another one and duplicate it. Just we'll finish 2 sets of buttons and we'll just duplicate it on the bottom side right here. So I'm gonna grab this edge right here, the outer one, and I am gonna extend it a little bit so that it's like halfway through the rotation right there. And I'm gonna do the exact same thing with this one. So extend it so that it's halfway there. Perfect. And then I'm gonna grab this whole thing, extrude it, and scale it again so that we start creating the actual border of the whole thing. Same for this one. Control E and extrude it so that we can create the border. And what I'm going to do is roughly halfway through, which is this one right here. It's not exactly halfway. This is halfway. So it's one after the halfway point. Right around there. I'm going to delete those faces. So delete these faces here. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on these faces here. Now this border, or this point right here, I'm going to try to get it as close as possible to a straight line so that we are following this direction right here. Another thing we can do is we can rotate our image plane. But in this case, we have enough pixels, I would say, to guesstimate where this thing's supposed to be. We're just going to straighten this a little bit more. And we're going to do the exact same thing over here. And over here. Perfect. Now, we're going to combine both elements. And what we're going to do is we're going to bridge. So we're going to grab this 4 elements right here and this 4 one right here. And if we bridge, the connection is going to be pretty much there. I know that we're going to need probably at least 2 or 3 like divisions there just to have a nicer, again, topology. And then what we can do is we can grab this 3 edges, Control E, just push it forward like that. And then grab this 3 edges, Control E, push them there. That's actually going to give me an even straighter line. Okay. So one thing I can do is I can grab this edge right here. And I can try to mimic the same sort of like distance that we have on this one. And then finally, these 2 points or these 2 edges, we just bridge them together. So what we've created here, oh, it seems like we meshed one. Let's just extrude this out. This 2 we can just collapse to the center. And there we go. There we go. I'm going to show you another trick here to straighten things out because you can see that that line right there looks horrible, horrible. So we just bridge that there. Control E. We grab those 2, and this one goes there. Cool. So what we've done here is, which is what I was explaining, is we've successfully created an edge loop that goes around both rings, right? And then we have an edge loop within each ring as well. So again, to straighten this, what we can do is we can grab all of the faces that need to be straightened. So let's say all of those. Hit R, and if you press R and click, you can change this to component. It's going to try to average out the components. So you snap them together, and then you just like rotate them so they're as straight as possible. Same thing over here. We grab all of those, R, straighten them together, and then just rotate them a little bit so we get them as close as possible to a straight line. Perfect. And one of the cool things is eventually when we press, let me save this real quick. So SNES controller, I recommend saving as Maya ASCII. There we go. So when we smooth things out, that curvature there is going to be a lot cleaner. And here's where you can, it's a very root term that I'm not going to mention here because we're going to get censored. You can start like literally pushing each specific point until you get the perfect curvature. Another thing, as I mentioned, is you can grab this thing, rotate it so that it's as like close as possible to a straight line. And then we can use the straight line down there. So all of this vertex right here. You can just snap them together. Same on this one's right here. And that's going to give us probably the closest we can get to a straight effect right there. I would just position this where it should be. Perfect. Control D. And this is going to go over here. Awesome. So we have the main like gray buttons, like the light gray elements. So this guy's right here. Let's combine them. Let's isolate them real quick. I'm going to Control E to give them thickness, push them in. If this happens to you, don't worry. Mesh display and then reverse. That's going to give you some nice clean elements. Finally, we do need to add a little bit of a bevel. So I'm going to grab all of the outer edges and work on the bevel. So 2 segments and a small fraction. So again, when we smooth, we get this very nice clean shape right there. Pro tip, if you don't need something, you don't model it, okay? So if we don't need these faces on the back, you just delete them, okay? So that's empty faces right there. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. I know some people like, unless you're gonna 3D print. If you're gonna 3D print, you definitely need to have like watertight meshes. But for like product modeling and product placement and stuff like that, you really don't need it. So finally, and this is where, well, not exactly where we're going to stop, but we're going to stop this sort of like first stage. I'm still not sure if I'm recording this as a whole video or just like multiple series. But the first stage is this gray button right here, right? The gray element. And actually made a little bit of a mistake here because as you can see, this border is already including that button. So I'm going to delete that. Because this element right here, or this border, is where the gray element should be. So Control E, I'm going to push down. And eventually I know that I need to bevel that. So how can we create a cylindrical shape that follows the exact thing that I have right here? Some of you might be booleans. Let's just boolean it out and that's fine. We're gonna be perfectly fine. And yes, booleans can definitely work. I'm not against booleans, but I want to show you like clean, proper topology for subdivision workflows, and that does require a little bit more thought to it. So before we do that though, I am going to place the buttons real quick. So that's it right there. Just push this forward a little bit. Grab this one, bevel, 2 segments in a smallish fraction, so we get a sort of like soft effect, right? We don't want people hurting themselves while playing our game. And we're gonna delete that. Perfect. There's a little bit of overlap there, but as you see, when we go into number 3 mode, it's perfectly fine. So don't worry too much about it. We do wanna get it as close as possible. Now I want to see another little pro tip. You can see that it is possible to see through the object to the other side. You can see a little bit of the image right there. Just flare it out a little bit. So if we just flare this out a little bit there, even if there's going to be an overlap, the overlap is going to be happening like so far back on the button that no one's going to notice, and you're going to be fine. So with this one done here, we're just going to do the exact same thing. Just duplicate this button on all of the slots that we have right here. Now, here comes the fun part. And again, this is all about topology. We need to generate a mesh that follows or has the exact cut of this gray controller right here. And the way to do that is actually by extracting the edges from this guy's right here and this guy right here, because we know that it needs to fit within those distances, right? So I'm going to grab those guys. I'm going to say again, edit mesh, duplicate. I'm going to push it just slightly forward. There we go. Just a bare, like almost nothing. And as you can see, we get this guy right here and this guy right here. I'm going to do the exact same thing here. So edit mesh, duplicate, just push it slightly forward like that. And that's it. So now we should have 3 objects, 3 very thin objects, which are this ones right here, that we can combine into a single object. And what we need to do is we actually need to fill out this inner section right here. Now, before doing that, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify. So if you remember this guy right here, we don't need all of these edges for now. I'm going to delete all of them. We're still going to have that sort of like pill shape right there. Shouldn't be changing too much of the silhouette. And it's going to allow me to combine it a little bit easier with the other elements. So let's delete those. So the straight areas, all of the straight edges that we have right here, we're going to delete. Maybe not that one. Delete. And all of this ones right here. There we go. Oh. There we go. Yeah, that looks good. So now we're going to grab this guy right here, Control E, and I'm going to extrude a little bit out. Just a little bit, not too much. Same thing with this one, Control E. We're going to extrude a little bit out. And then this one, Control E, and we're going to extrude a little bit in. That's it. So now we just select those new edge loops that we just created. Shift select everything else to delete it, and this is what we're going to get. So this one right here, as you can see, follows perfectly fine. Well, actually, Looks like we're missing, maybe after the smoothing, we're probably missing one line or a couple of lines like here. That it holds a little bit better. There we go. So we just need to make sure that it holds nicely on all of the elements. We might need a couple of cuts right there. So some of the edges that I deleted might not be... We should not have deleted them yet. There we go. That's a lot better. Or there. Perfect. Okay, so now we're gonna do mesh display reverse. And here's where the fun begins. Because what we need to do now is we need to somehow connect all of the faces here to all of the faces on the outside in a nice, clean way. So Control E first. I'm gonna give this a little bit more of an extrusion right there. And it's a matter of trying to, again, find the faces that are just going in sort of like the same direction or the same flow. So for instance here, it might be easier to just add a couple of cuts right here. It's not gonna kill our like optimization, and it's gonna make it a little bit easier for us to bridge all of these elements right here. Now, the cool thing about this is a flat area, and whenever you're dealing with flat areas, it is very or relatively simple to keep a clean topology because it's flat. Like even if you have some triangles or angles or something, it's not gonna destroy your topology. It's not gonna make it impossible to work with. However, again, as I've mentioned before, this is a very, very good exercise for topology processes. So one of the tricks that I'm going to show you now is the reduction technique, which is how can we go, for instance, from 3 elements to just one single face? And the answer is by using Quadra and creating this shape right here. It's like a U shape. So you do this little like element, and there you go. So now as you can see, oh my God. That's a new record, 21 minutes before he sneezes. So as you can see now, we are converting these 3 elements into a single face. And it's a very good way to make things more optimal. Now again, this only works here because we're dealing with a very sort of like flat area. If we're doing something a little bit more organic, oh my God, if we're doing something a little bit more organic, then this might be a little bit more complicated to do. Even though we're doing this sort of like trick, you still want to try keeping the... Now, I've said before that, again, for this sort of like flat surfaces, you don't always need to have this sort of like configuration. Sometimes you can even get away with having just like some triangles. Triangles are not your enemies. I know it's a very common sort of like, not issue, but a very common thought that people say, no, we shouldn't have triangles on a subdivision surface like this one. They're totally fine. See all of those triangles that I'm adding right there? They're not going to break anything. They're in a flat area. They're not going to change the way things deform. So again, every now and then, having a triangle here or there is not going to destroy our topology. Besides, there's a very interesting trick with topology, and that is that once you have your topology like figured out, like here for instance, let's just, that's a big square. It's a little bit of a big square right there. Like that's one of the, this will be one of the areas that, again, if this was not flat, I might be a little bit concerned about. But other than that, yeah, just like keep filling all of this in right there, and there we go. So it might not look super pretty right here. Let's go there and there. There we go. It might not look super pretty right here, and you can see that we even have some deformation issues, but it's very easy to fix. First of all, we're gonna scale everything down so they're completely flat. And once it's flat, no one's gonna know. Like the meme, right? Like they're gonna know. No one's gonna know. Like this is not gonna bother us. It's not gonna really affect us. And once we do the extrusion for the depth, this is gonna be completely fixed. And another thing is when we smooth this out. So if I say, for instance, mesh is smooth, all of the triangles, everything right there becomes a like normal effect. And I know if you're an advanced user, you're watching this video, you're like, oh, this guy, he's teaching like some like wrong ways to do it. Again, this is an object that's not going to deform. It's an object that's not going to have any sort of like effect on the on animation, right? It's an static object. So even though this is not the cleanest topology, if this is the first time you're doing this asset or an asset like this, it's perfectly fine. Again, like no, it's not going to shade wrong. I know that's a very common concern. It's like, oh, you're going to get some weird artifacts in the shading. No, you're not. And the reason why you're not is because this is, again, a completely flat object. And one way you can check that out is if you assign a material, for instance, a blend material, and you just like press number 3. Let's make this a slightly darker blend material. There we go. So you can see right there, look at that. Look at the shading. It's perfect. It's perfect shading. Absolutely perfect. You're not gonna get any pinch. You're not gonna get any sort of like weird effect. This is gonna be perfectly valid for what we're doing. The only thing that we're missing here is, of course, on this edge right here, we need to add an edge loop, 2 segments, and a small frame. There we go. So we get this very like nice effect right there. And look at that. Maybe we can even already grab sort of like the color of this like neutral gray effect. There we go. And I mean, might as well, right? We're already doing this, so let's assign a new material. Maya. Let's do actually an Arnold AI standard surface. And on the color, we're gonna sample this nice light gray color. Now that one, of course, is gonna go on this guys, the AI standard surface. And cool little tip here: if you have a bleed material, you can quickly change this into an AI standard surface. Yes, you're gonna have to reselect the color, but it's gonna be a relatively easy way to bring this back into where it's supposed to be. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's just add a couple more colors. Let's go to the front view. I feel like this one might need to be just should be up. I'm gonna push this up, and I'm just gonna make it slightly bigger. Actually, not that one. If we make slightly bigger, it's gonna affect the button layout as well. I'm gonna have a little bit of a raised surface right there. Perfect. Now this one's, as well as the buttons, should also be a little bit further forward. There we go. Now remember the trick that I mentioned. So if you don't want to see the interpolation, we can flare this out just a little bit to create a little bit of an overlap right there. This is only for rendering. Like if we were doing again 3D printing or something else, we might need to follow a slightly different strategy. And here is where, if you want to be like completely like pixel perfect, you can try pushing some of these guys down so we get a nicer overlap. But I don't think it's really affecting us that much. Like that is always going to be dependent on how specific the project has to be, right? So if it has to be perfect, then yeah, you of course need to spend all that time making sure that that element looks as nice as possible. But in this particular case, I don't think we're going to need it. So that's it. Now, before we finish today's video, because I definitely think that we're going to be doing this into multiple like series, or like a small little series. So if you guys want to make sure you get the notification for when the next part comes in, don't forget to subscribe. We're going to continue with more of the buttons and more of the elements. But I just want to do a very quick thing right here, which is just prepare the little buttons right here with the colors, and we're gonna throw in a very quick render setup just to start getting our little render. So once you see the thumbnails, you're gonna see how the thumbnails are gonna start like improving as we add more and more stuff. So this is going to be like the basic of the element, so like the basic blocking. Actually, there's one thing that I suggest doing, which is if you want to make this thing look just a little bit nicer, we could add this cube right here, which is of course the like a placeholder for the arrows. Control E, I'm gonna keep faces together off so we can push this out, and there we go. So that way on the little thumbnail we can also have like a nice little element right there. So I'm gonna control or just H, hide the image frame for now, and I'm gonna add the thickness because I know that when we do the render, this is gonna look a little bit weird. Let's add the bevel on this guy. We can always remove this. There we go. And that way we can just grab everything. Well, this one, we definitely need to just bevel everything. 2 segments and a small fraction. There we go. Let's save real quick. And if we press number 3, everything's going to be very smooth. It's going to look nice. And this is just the first step. We've been working on this for what, like 30 minutes now? So it's a very, very nice like first step for this exercise. And again, as I mentioned, we're going to have more of this coming in the next coming days. So make sure to subscribe. And let's grab this one. Push it a little bit further out. Now for the colors, there's a bunch of ways to do this, but I'm just gonna grab I'm gonna actually, if you're like waiting until this very no, let's keep it simple. I'm gonna keep it simple. I was gonna show you a trick with ramps, but I'm just gonna keep it simple. So I'm just gonna go Arnold AI standard surface, and let's select the blue color, and then new material Arnold AI standard surface. We select the green color. They're glossy, so I'm not even gonna move anything. I'm gonna keep them very, very nice and clean. New material Arnold AI standard surface. This is gonna be the red color, and finally right click, new material Arnold AI standard surface, and we're gonna add the yellow color. Well, not that yellow. That yellow is horrible. Looks very bad. Let's grab the true yellow. There we go. So yeah, that's it. So now let's do a very quick render. And we've talked about renders before, so I'm not going to delve too much into it. We're just going to go to Polyhaven to get ourselves a nice HDRI. So we're going to go here, and I usually like to go indoors. Let's go for something that looks Nintendo-ish, right? So, oh, that one, like, yeah, I like this one. Blue Photo Studio, it looks very nice. So we're going to download this EXR. 4K is more than enough. Let's get this guy right here. And of course, we're going to bring this into our source images as well. Because remember, anything that we're going to be referencing into Maya has to go into source images. So we're going to go Arnold, lights, and we're going to add a Skydome light. And here on the color of the Skydome light, we're going to add a file. And of course, the file is going to be that Blue Photo Studio. There we go. So, as you can see, we're already here. We're going to go rendering, cameras, panels, look selected. And we're going to find a nice sort of like composition. I think this is going to be great. Right there. First and foremost, like, you know, like nicely framed for the whole thing. We see a little bit of the thickness. See, we don't even need to do the backside of this thing because we're not even seeing it. Last thing that we might need to do is just assign a dark material for this thing. Arnold, standard surface, and just make this darker. There we go. So we're now going to test one of the new things here inside of Arnold, which is a change that they made to the GPU system. So here in system, I'm changing this to GPU. And on the common options, I'm going to go to Full HD, so HD 1080. On the renderer, I'm going to turn on adaptive sampling, and I'm going to set this to 5. 5 should be a good number for this test. Let's save real quick. And couple more things. Here on the image, I'm going to bring the camera visibility to 0. If I had a bottle with like a genie and it gave me 3 wishes, one of those wishes would definitely be, please remove my allergies. I hate them, especially when I'm recording. It's one of the most horrible things that I can experience when I'm recording because it just cuts my inspiration. Anyway, so we're removing the camera visibility so that we don't see it. This is just going to be a dark background. And once we have that, we are going to just say Arnold and render. And technically, on this new version of Arnold, they changed something so that the render goes faster. Like this initial setup here should go a little bit faster. I was reading about like a 25% increase on speed. So let's see if that's true. Well, actually, this is the first time that I'm doing it. So as you can see, it's compiling the GPU module. There we go. So not bad. Not great, but not bad. Took 21 seconds for this one right here. Let's do it again. So without the compilation, okay, that's better. 1 second or less than a second. So definitely better. Let's, of course, add over here a denoiser optics imager, which is going to clean up the image. And now we can play a little bit with the, with the light setup, right? Because right now it's a very sort of like boring, flat light setup. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate the HDRI a little bit to the left. This is going to, or should remove a little bit of the glare that we're seeing right here, and it should give us a little bit of a longer shadow. That was way too much. You can definitely see the longer shadow here on the crosshair and on some of the buttons. That's a little bit too much, so let's bring it back a little bit more. That's better. I still feel like it's a little bit too much. So let's do that. I do want to have a little bit of a shadow, but not too much. There we go. That's way better. As you can see, we have a little bit of a shadow from the crosshair and from the buttons. And now, of course, let's add a very nice rim light to like make this whole thing pop even more. So we're gonna go area light, and we're gonna have this area light on this top section right here. This area light's probably gonna be blue. Like I want to make it really cool. And let's set the exposure to something like 15. 15 is usually a good number for the scale that we're working at least. So I mean, it's getting there. Not great. Let's increase this a little bit more, maybe 20. But he's probably gonna overdo it. Yeah, that's way too much. Let's go back to like 18. And now it's about like proper positioning. So I'm gonna rotate this a little bit so that it's not hitting the front like face. There we go. So you can see we get a little bit of a rim light right there. One cool thing you can do here is change the color of your light. And you're going to be able to see where the light is actually affecting your objects. As you can see, it's like affecting it quite a bit everywhere. I really just want to have like a nice rim light. So I'm going to bring the spread down so that it's more of a spotlight. There we go. See that? So now we're getting that nice or like effect that we want to have right there. We can, of course, remove this color again and go back to our temperature. And that's going to add us that nice little rim light right there. It might be a little bit difficult to see, But here, let me show you the comparison. So this is the first one, and this is without the rim light. So quite the difference, right? It really pops with that little extra rim light right there. So yeah, that's it, guys. This is part 1 of the series, and this one in particular, I actually want to like go through some texturing exercise as well later on. So if you want me to go over that, please make sure to leave me a comment so that we know that this is a series worth continuing. We got a lot of other pending series as well. We got the dragon going on. What else? The chess set. So please just let me know in the comments if you like this one so that we can continue doing it. We're gonna finish the modeling, and we might do a little bit of a texturing exercise as well. Now, if you want to learn more about Maya or Substance Painter and you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is by checking the premium courses that you can find here in the description. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you like this nice little exercise, especially if you're a beginner in Maya. I hope this has been clear and has been instructive for your artistic growth. And yeah, with nothing else to add, I'll see you back on the next one.